Hey there, guys. All right, today we are back with some more of the with another I'm butchering this intro. We're back with week 4 of World War II. Every single week. This time the Russians are coming. The Soviet invasion of Poland, September 22nd, 1939. Before we dive in, make sure you go and check out the links in the description box below. I would love to join the Discord. Follow me over at Twitch, and please do go check out the 2 gaming channels here on YouTube. One is for edited content, and then the other is just for the stream VODs, the average 3+ hour streams. Okay. That said, nothing else to say here at the beginning of this video. Let's dive right fucking in.
September 22nd, 1939. Germany invaded Poland at the beginning of the month, and this week, the Polish days of defense and desperation get far, far worse. This week, the Soviet Union also invades Poland.
Try not to team up on Poland challenge. Difficulty impossible.
I'm Indy Nidell. This is World War II. Last week, the Poles managed to surprise the Germans at the Bzura River, but after a few days of success, the tide turned and the Germans took over 150,000 Polish POWs. In the captured territory, the German war on civilians continued, though many in the German army were opposed to it, and in the West, Britain began landing troops in France in large numbers. In Poland itself, Warsaw is surrounded by the 16th, but refuses to surrender. The Polish army has retreated eastward and has planned to maybe regroup around Lvov, but those hopes are dashed on the 17th when the Soviets suddenly invade. Even Hitler's generals were unaware that this was going to happen. This day, Soviet Foreign Minister Vyacheslav Molotov declares in Moscow that the Polish government has ceased to exist. So Soviet
Jeez. All right, sir.
troops
Rude.
have occupied eastern Poland to protect Russian citizens in western Belarusia and western Ukraine. And now I'm going to go off on a tangent here.
Yes.
An interesting point by Max Hastings in All Hell Let Loose. From a 2018 perspective, and because of, spoiler alert, the way the war ended with Russia on the Allied side, many historians have accepted the post-war Soviet Union's claim that they were neutral in the early stages of the war. This is false. In 1939, he made a historic decision to acquiesce in German aggression in return for Nazi support for Moscow's own program of territorial aggrandizement. Whatever excuses the Soviet leader later offered, and although his armies never fought in partnership with the Wehrmacht, the Nazi-Soviet pact established a collaboration. And it is certainly true to the world at large this week in 1939, Germany and the Soviet Union are the twin faces of totalitarianism. Now, Hitler has hopes that the Russian invasion will cause the Allies to declare war on the Soviet Union. And though there is some debate in London, for example, as to whether Britain's commitments to Poland involved fighting against another enemy, it is only Winston Churchill and Leslie Hoare Belisha, the Secretary of State for War, who think war with the Soviet Union is something to prepare for. The Foreign Office say,
I knew Churchill would be saying yes to that, but the other dude, well, I didn't hear about the other dude up until this series.
Britain's Polish guarantee was only in case of German invasion. The Poles are at first bewildered and then completely outraged that their Western allies have done nothing to help them.
Yep.
But you know, what could they really do? German General Erich von Manstein writes of the invasion of Poland, "It's a grand decision of the Führer in view of the attitude of the Western powers up till now. His offer to solve the Polish question was so obliging that England and France, if they had really wanted peace, should have pushed Poland into accepting." The 17th is in fact the day that the Poles expect the French to begin their promised offensive on the Western Front. But instead, the French call off their probing attacks in Saarbrücken. There was going to be a larger advance, but the Polish collapse sort of makes it seem pointless to them. The next day, Polish President Ignacy Mościcki and Army Commander Edvard Ridge.
The French were in the position to push through the German lines. The Germans were heavily focused on Poland. That's the thing that's, like, obviously we got hindsight. The advantage of hindsight here, knowing that the Germans likely could not have held back a Anglo-French assault on the Rhineland unless they diverted troops from their invasion of Poland, more troops from Poland. The part that bothers me is that they did absolutely nothing, right? Like, I could understand maybe if you started the attack and then you met some resistance and you lost confidence, and so then you held back. The Poles being angry about that, feeling like that's not enough of a commitment, that would also be valid. But also then you could, as a Westerner, look back on that and be like, well, they at least tried. You look back on this and you're like, they didn't even try, man.
Smigwi enter Romania. They are interned because Mościcki issues an official proclamation for Poles to continue the war and make their way to France, and is thus functioning as a belligerent regime on Romanian soil. The Germans protested, and the Romanians enforced international law rather than risk German intervention. And as the Soviets advance, there is basically no defense against them because of the German invasion. The Russians have 2 army groups invading. The Polish have 18 battalions in the whole east of Poland. As for the rest of the week of war, on the 17th, British aircraft carriers are taken off of anti-U-boat patrols after the Courageous is sank by U-29. 518 sailors died.
Damn.
The following day, the British public hears the first broadcast of Lord Haw Haw from Berlin.
Germany calling, Germany calling. Here are the Reichs under ambush. Station Bremen and Station DXB on the 31-meter band. You are about to hear our news in English.
Lord Haw Haw is actually Irish-American William Joyce, and his broadcasts are German propaganda.
Oh, I've heard about this scar. Isn't that like, what is it called? It has a few names, but ain't that related to gang violence in the British Isles?
Propaganda designed to demoralize the British people. By the 19th, Soviet advanced troops reach the Hungarian border. In the north, Vilna falls. The Soviets link up with the Germans at Brest-Litovsk, which is given to the Soviets as per the August 23rd secret agreement. On the 20th, Adolf Hitler enters Danzig and is given a huge welcome by the mostly German population. After this, he goes to the resort town of Sopot and meets with Karl Brandt, his personal doctor, Leonardo Conti, the chief German medical officer, and Philipp Buhler, Reichsleiter, the second highest political officer of the Nazi Party, just below Hitler himself.
Oh,
There,
literally have never heard of that man's name before. We're learning shit in this series. Damn.
Hitler lays out his plans for killing the insane in Germany. He backdates his order to September 1st and gives the green light to give a merciful death to all those who are incurably ill.
Even those with epilepsy? I got a buddy that would be dead then. Got a good friend. Learning disability. I'd be dead. I'd be dead. Maybe. I don't know. Depends on how well I'd be able to mask it. And if they would have... I might have been able to... I mean, I was able to go through childhood without ever anything getting brought up. So maybe I'd be able to make it back then. But I don't know if in adulthood I'd be... I don't know. I feel like my ability to mask has disappeared. I've stopped caring. But obviously, if my life was on the line, maybe I would start caring again about perception.
The organization that will carry out the euthanasia program will be known as T4, and it's named after the address of its center, Tiergartenstrasse 4 in Berlin. Werner Heide, a psychology and neurology
Homosexual
professor, is its head, and the
insomnia and anxiety was enough? Well, no, I'm guessing the Oh, they'd get me for the anxiety. They would get me for the anxiety. Religious delusions, what does that mean?
program will scour the asylums for those.
And what kind of learning disability are we talking? Are we talking about dyslexia? Like, learning disability can apply to so many fucking things. It could be ADHD, dyslexia. What the fuck?
Neurology professor is its head, and the program will scour the asylums for those to receive a merciful death. One of the doctors will explain the program like this: "The idea is unbearable to me that the best, the flower of our youth, must lose its life at the front in order that feeble-minded and asocial elements can have a secure existence in the asylum."
That's like the point of society. That's like what we've been doing from the beginning of fucking time. The physically capable do the things that they can, so that then those that lack that ability can then they provide society with other things. You just gotta nurture that, and then they are able to be productive members of society, whatever the fuck that means.
Over the next couple of years, tens of thousands of people judged insane will be put to death in Germany. But not everyone is for Hitler's extreme agenda. The Einsatzgruppen, the SS task forces, have continued killing Jews in the towns that fell under German control. But on the 20th, the German 14th Army reports that a lot of the soldiers are really uneasy by what they call illegal measures taken by the SS task force assigned to them under General Udo von Boysch. Actually, one grievance from many fighting soldiers is that the SS men are not fighting at the front, but rather against defenseless civilians. Field Marshal von Rundstedt, in charge of the whole Army Group South, then says Boysch's men will no longer be tolerated in the war zone. The crisis between the fighting soldiers and their SS counterparts is not going to resolve itself easily. Thing is, Reinhard Heydrich, who had formed the Einsatzgruppen on Heinrich Himmler's instructions, has a more ambitious plan in mind. On the 21st, he has an emergency conference in Berlin with all of the SS commanders of the task forces in Poland. In order to prepare for the ultimate goal, Polish Jews are to be concentrated in a few of the larger cities. Jews not living in those cities and any Jews living in Western Poland are to be sent to them. So Western Poland is going to be totally cleared of Jews. Now, once the Jews are in these cities, they will be limited to one quarter and not allowed to go to the rest of the city. There will even be a council of Jewish elders set up to ensure that all the movement of the Jews happens on time. So they are going to reinstitute the medieval concept of the ghetto. This is a first step towards their final solution to the Jewish question. Of course, the task force killings don't stop because of this. At the end of the week, the Brandenburg Division reached Wrocławek, where they will spend a few days blowing up synagogues, looting Jewish shops, and rounding up and murdering prominent Jews. I've talked about the Soviets in Europe, but what about the Soviet Union in Asia this week? Well, the armistice signed 8 days ago on the 15th between Japan and the Soviet Union goes into effect as this week begins. The fighting between the Soviets and Mongolians on one side and the Japanese on the other had gone on over the summer until the end of August. See, with the threat of war in Europe, Joseph Stalin had wanted to end the Japanese actions from Manchukuo, Japan's Manchurian puppet state. The Japanese, for their part, are worried about the threat of Bolshevik expansion and the fact that the Soviet Union was supplying the Chinese, with whom Japan is currently at war, with T-26 tanks, money, and military advisors. Back in November 1936, Japan even signed the Anti-Comintern, Communist International, Pact with Germany, which Italy and Spain later signed, under which Germany recognized Manchukuo, and after which tension on the Mongolian border grew between Russia and Japan. There were border skirmishes in 1937, and a big one, the Changkufeng incident in 1938. And Japan's Kwangtung army grew frustrated with Emperor Hirohito for not letting them attack the Soviets in force, whom they assumed, mistakenly, would not fight back. However, Many Japanese politicians did not want a Mongolian war against the Soviet Union, but the Japanese army, without telling Tokyo, had issued an order to the commanders in the region to act as they saw fit on the spot, without consulting the general staff, hence the fighting all summer and eventual stalemate. By late August, General Zhukov was ready for his surprise attack, which we saw 3 weeks ago ended in overwhelming Soviet victory. During that attack, Germany and the Soviet Union had signed a pact of their own as German troops massed on the Polish border. The Japanese were stunned by the unexpected defeat, and this has far-reaching results. The Chinese, both the communists and nationalists, were emboldened and encouraged by it, of course, but the Japanese army and those who had favored striking north against the Soviets now fade from prominence, and those who favored striking south, led by the Navy, can have their day. So this summer series of battles, the battles of Khalkhin Gol, was a major influence on the future direction of Japanese aggression. But Japan needs a morale boost after the loss to the Russians, and this week they begin the first battle of Changsha.
Why would the Japanese even want to fight the Russians on that border? Like, there's no, there's no good it's Siberia. It sucks. Are there some resources out there? Probably, maybe, but like, how are you gonna organize? You're also already still fighting China. Worry about China first, my dude.
Shah against the Chinese, which we'll see more of in a couple of weeks. And as the week comes to an end, the Soviets take Lvov, and Romanian Prime Minister Călinescu is murdered by the fascist organization, the Iron Guard. Polish independence has now nearly been extinguished as both the Germans and the Soviets advance, and the Soviets no longer have to worry about the Japanese. And Hitler lays out his plans for putting the insane in the Reich to death. And Heydrich tells his commanders to recreate the ghetto system in Poland in preparation for the final solution of what to do with the Jews. I don't think I have to add any more, since we all know what that is. If you'd like to learn more about the conflict between Poland and Soviet...
And that was week 4 of World War II. The Russians are coming. The Soviet invasion of Poland, September 22nd, 1939. We're going to be learning a lot of stuff that never really gets talked about, I feel like, when it comes to the general study of World War II, both in high school level and also at university level, unless you're pursuing like a degree in like World War II studies or whatever, which I don't think many people do these days. Like, it's kind of boring, I'm not gonna lie. But anyways, that was this week's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.